Hi there, this is Yudron. I want to talk a little bit today about why you might be interested in Buddhism as a path of spiritual practice, as a American, European, this kind of general kind of person who was not raised, perhaps, in a Buddhist tradition. That's what I'm driving at. I never want to be somebody who's trying to proselytize or recruit people from other spiritual paths that they're very happy with and connected to. That's not my goal. But as you can see from polls about people, especially Americans, about their spiritual beliefs, they're, as we know, sick and tired of organized religion and leaving churches. Not everyone. There's still obviously significant numbers of people very much involved with churches, but there's a growing, perhaps, majority of people who just don't want to participate in the church as it was known. Among those, some people are not sure about God, whether they believe in that idea. They have other feelings churning up inside of them. Perhaps this mirrors you. It just didn't make them feel comfortable in a church anymore. Or maybe they've never been part of a Christian congregation, a Jewish synagogue, etc. I wasn't. And they want to find their own way. So I just want to say a couple of things about Buddhism that might make you, in general. There's many different Buddhist traditions. But some of the things you might be interested in or not is, number one, the existence of a supreme God is not the center of the religion. Buddha famously remained silent when asked, is there a supreme being? They had different ideas in India about what that was exactly, but he didn't want to go there. And what was communicated in that silence, who knows? But it's not what we're about. So you can investigate and learn about the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, or the traditionally it was the monastic assembly. But nowadays we talk about it in terms of our peers on the path supporting us, and see whether that is something that might take primacy for you over the idea of a God. What kind of feeling do you get when you see, the images of Buddha in our society? As I've said before, are like usually in the garden, right? Those cement Buddhas, and then there's the Tibetan prayer flags. People can't read the Tibetan on them, but the feeling is the good vibes come from those prayer flags. So for Tibetans, there's actual prayers and mantras. They're carried by the wind on the beautiful, colorful prayer flags, right? Things like that. You see a Buddha sitting on the shelf. What do you feel? Maybe you feel, that's different, or wow, peaceful. I wonder if he's meditating. I wonder if his mind is the same way mind is. Whatever. Maybe you don't have any questions at all, but you're drawn in some way, or you read a book, you go to a talk by one of the famous Buddhist teachers. So that's there. They don't really, isn't based on worshiping a God. But it is based on respect for the Buddha, and the great teachers that hold the tradition and the books we treat very well. We elevate them, don't step on them on the floor, this kind of thing. We respect uplifted feeling. That's more of the feeling of Buddhism. So that's kind of in the first topic. I think a really important thing, which is not 100% unique to Buddhism, but it's a part that you should know about, which is not harming. When you become a Buddhist, you're supposed to do your very best not to hurt anybody. Animals, humans, if there are invisible beings, gods and ghosts and all that, you don't want to hurt them either. It's a harmless idea. So Quakers have this, the Jains in India have this. It's not completely unknown in this world to have a non-harming or non-violent relationship to all living beings. But this is sort of something you would have to sign up for if you decide to get deeply into Buddhism and not just listen to stress reduction recordings or apps and call it Buddhism. If you really want to, decide this is who reflects who I am. You could reflect on the idea of I'm really tired of everybody hurting each other in this world, not caring about the welfare of other living beings. I want to be number one, the first person, maybe in my family, in my village, within many, many blocks or miles of here that says, I'm done. I'm not going to harm sentient beings. That's that word, sentient beings. It was literally, sort of sounds like Semchen, which is like great minds, beings with minds. In other words, I'm not going to harm. I'm going to do my best. There's always mistakes, but it's not to hurt anything. Maybe when you're young, you think that's not a big deal. But as you go through life and you see the way the human beings conduct themselves, it becomes like talk about one percenters. You could be part of a different kind of one percenter, not a gang of thugs that want to hurt people or assert their identity, some concept on other people. But part of the 1% that decides I'm going to do this life different than my parents, different than my grandparents. So it is, in some ways, it could, we like to say Buddhism is a philosophy, but it's also a religion in that way, because you're saying I'm making commitment, right? That's what's called going for refuge in Buddha language. So that was the second one. Yeah. So the third idea is like this. Buddhism, whatever kind of Buddhism you follow, has this idea of spiritual development and even enlightenment, various forms of realization and so forth. So it's based on that idea. So more than dying and going to heaven, it's like right now in this life, I'm going to develop. And you have this systems of training, many systems of training for this, for example, in Zen, in Tibetan Buddhism, and in the Theravadan schools across what's the Buddhism in Southern Asia is called. There's guideposts along the way, so you can kind of tell how you're doing. I mean, all of them would say if you're becoming a kinder, gentler person, having loving kindness for all living beings, viewing all living beings equally, not pitting yourself against other people or animals, then you are progressing along a path. So we can hope that we're doing that, right? So it gives you a purpose that's greater than all the little purposes in your life. Even if you have a really excellent purpose, like we're doing a really good job being a parent, eventually they're going to go off to college and they're going to have their own life. And sure, you hope to stay close to them, but your work is done. They're their own person, right? Ultimately, it's you you have to worry about. And so these goals, like academic goals, business goals, they're all good, family goals. They're great. But if you have a real transcendent goal, to seeing yourself develop as not only a better human being, but having spiritual, I don't like breakthroughs. I don't know if I've ever had a spiritual breakthrough. People talk that way. They're just called experiences in the tradition I come from. It's not, you're not supposed to make that big a deal about experiences and get hung up obsessing about some idea. But you feel yourself unfolding, purifying, finding new qualities come forth that were hidden before. It's so satisfying. And it doesn't depend on what circumstance you're in. There's wonderful people in prison. who are always developing. They have very hard circumstances to work in. How much better it is for those of us who can do a little practice, study a little bit, and that kind of thing. How much more beautiful is that? So those three things, I think, are indications, if they ring a bell for you, that maybe you want to investigate Buddhism. Your local center is sometimes a good place to start. And it's good to also investigate the mothership organization that they're part of, if any, and make sure that it's a good one, it's got a good reputation. But then go for it. Go to your local place. If there is one, there's most places in the United States, they do have them. Some of them are beautiful centers of Asian people, immigrants, and they may be in another language than yours. And others are mostly convert Buddhists like me. And some of them feature groups for people of color. And because there's not a sense of safety in, for example, a white dominant group, because of all those baby boomers, and so they want to spend, as well as participating in larger group events, they want to have time to connect with other people in the same situation that they're in. All kinds of different centers and situations in the United States. And this is a great time to, as centers are reopening post-pandemic, to put your little toe into that building. See, what's the experience like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like in that center? How do they greet you? How do you sit there? Can you sit on the floor on a cushion? Do you need a chair? Do they have chairs? What's the vibe between people there? Is it weird? Is it weird because it's actually weird, some kind of culty, strange thing that you've stumbled into? Or is it weird because it's just a new environment that you've never been to a Buddhist center before? It's an adventure you can have probably pretty close to home instead of having to get on an airplane and go someplace to a different country. To have an adventure now, you can have an adventure in your own town, very likely. Okay, that's it. Nice seeing you again. Bye-bye.